Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Eminence and welcome to Brand by Tidies. In this tutorial, we're going to be making an off-shoulder bustier and I'm going to be drafting it with this pattern paper that I have on my table. So I realize that a lot of people prefer when I cut directly on my fabric, but to be honest, pattern paper is not that hard. So I don't know why you guys prefer to cut directly on your fabric, but the way I'm going to be drafting on this pattern paper, you can cut it directly on your fabric. It's just that I'm working with some patch fabric and I cannot cut directly on my fabric, so that's why I'm drafting on this pattern paper. So these are the fabric that I'm going to be using, and let's just get started with the video. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to mark a straight line, and this is where I'm going to start all my measurements from. This will just serve as you can call this your chest line or your starting point. So just ignore this line at the bottom. I forgot to remove 4 inches when taking my top length, and that was why I have that measurement. So I'm just taking it again. So you can see that I removed 4 inches at the top. So you're going to be doing this with all your measurements, because this is an off shoulder, so this is like the standard measurements. Remove 4 inches at the top of your length of whatever you're working with. Remove 4 inches at the top, or at least 5 inches if you want it to be really deep and really deep. So yeah, I was feeling dizzy when I was making this video, and I decided to drink water, and I don't know why I decided to show you guys, and the thing just spilled on my pattern. So I tried cleaning this up, but I don't know, there was still water there, so just ignore. So now I took the length, and this is the length of my top. I'm making a top with this. I took the length and I added 1 inches for seam allowance. So here I have 18 inches. So you can see that at the top I removed 4 inches. So now I'm going to take my nipple point measurements and my under bust, and my nipple point measurement is 10.5 and my under bust is 13.5. So I'm just taking those measurements and I'm just going to mark the lines out. So this is my nipple point, my under bust, and my top length or half length or waistline. So whatever you are making, you have your waistline definitely. So just label that as the line. So yeah, I'm just taking my armhole measurement. This will serve as my bust line measurement. So this is 8 inches. So just remove 4 inches at the top, and this will be your bust line. This is where you're going to place your bust measurements. So you can see what I have, 8 inches. Just use your armhole measurement to do this, your armhole measurement. So now, using my nipple to nipple measurement, I'm going to take, which is 8 inches divided by 2, which is 4 inches. I'm going to take 4 inches from my nipple point to my waistline, and at the top I'm going to take 5 inches. So you can see what I have here. So normally I'll take 4 inches to the top, but recently I found out that a lot of people are now making their bustier to look like a princess cut. So you can even go deeper at that chest line, that starting point line, if you want. Maybe like you can use like 5.5 inches if you want, but I think this 5 inches is enough. Now I'm going to take 1 inches on both sides like this at my waistline, at my under bust, and I'm going to go down by 1 inches at the nipple point measurement. So you can see what I did in the video. I went down by 1 inches, and on top of it I went up by 1 inches, and I'm just going to mark those lines. So now we are going to connect these lines at the top. Before I forget, at the top I'm going to take 1 inches on both sides as well. So now I'm going to connect these lines. So the first thing you need to do is to connect your under bust line to your waistline, and to connect your under bust line with your waistline. and I'm going to use my curved rule to connect from my under bust to nipple point. So just watch what I'm about to do. If you don't have this ruler, you can totally use your free hand. Just maybe use the dots method. So you can see what I'm doing at that point where I came down by 1 inches. That point where I came down by 1 inches is just like a guide. It's not like I'm going to make it really straight, but I'm just trying to connect it so that it will have a little bit of curve. I'm using that as a guide. Just look at what I did in the video so you can understand. I'm using that as a guide so that it's not going to have like a sharp edge at the nipple points. You know those pointed dots that you see on some clothes? I'm trying to avoid that. So from the chest line, from the starting point line, whichever way, just let's call it the chest line or the starting point line, I'm going to connect it to the nipple point. So you can see at that 1 inches as well, I'm just trying to make a curve. So now I'm going to take my neckline, and for the neckline I saw a particular method online and I decided to use it. So the method was take your shoulder measurements, which is 16 inches, and minus 2 inches from your shoulder measurements. And for me it's if you minus 2 inches is 14, so 14 divided by 2 is 7 inches, so which means that my neckline is 7 inches. So normally I would always use 6 inches. That's what I've been using, and that was how I was taught. So except you are really smaller, you can just use 5 inches, but I used to use 6 inches. But I decided to try this method, let me try and be able to get a good measurement for every size. So I decided to use 7 inches, but it was a bit too big. I don't know, maybe because my shoulder is kind of broad, so that was why I didn't get it. But yeah, I'm using 7 inches, but make sure you use 6 for yours. So I'm just going to explain the way I place this on my pattern. So at that point I took what is left there, and what was left there was around 3-4 inches, I think. So I took what is left there and I continued the remaining 7 inches that I was marking at this point. So I'm going to ignore that dart because we are going to cut it out, so you don't need that dart at all. So you can see what I did here. I took the remaining measurement that we have there and I completed it on the other side. So make sure you ignore that dart because you are taking that dart away. You don't need it at all. You're not going to use it in this pattern, so make sure you ignore that dart and make sure you complete your neckline. I used 7 inches here, but later after sewing I adjusted it back to 6 inches. So I would advise that you use 6 inches for yours. Except you are really small, you can now decide to use 5 inches. Now at the bust line, I'm going to take my bust measurement divided by 4. So my bust is 35 and divided by 4 is 9 approximately. So I'm going to take 9 inches and I'm going to measure what we have on that line, that point that I just pointed, and I'm going to add it, and I'm going to add 2 inches for seam allowance. So here I think I have about 12 inches. My bust measurement divided by 4 plus the dart we have on that line plus 2 inches for seam allowance. Please make sure you add 2 inches for seam allowance so you don't get shortage or you don't get short of material when sewing. Now at the waistline, this is also my top length, but if you're making like a gown, this can serve as your waistline. So at the waistline, I'm going to take my waist circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to add the dart allowance that we are taking off to that measurement and add 2 inches for seam allowance. I put this on the screen, so make sure you check it out in case you don't understand, or comment and I'm going to reply you. So now I'm going to connect this like so, and at the chest line I'm going to connect my neckline to the bust line. So you can see what I have here. This is just going to serve as the armhole. Now after doing this, I'm going to add half inches for the sleeve half inches so that I'll be able to join the sleeve. I just added half inches at the top, and I'm going to connect it to the bust line. So you can see what I have here. This will just serve as the allowance to join the sleeve. Now I'm going to take my neckline and how to show you how to curve it. So for the neckline, I just go down by 2.5. I just went down by 2.5 inches. So this is like standard, not really standard, but this is just the simple measurement that you can use. But depending on the neckline that you want, you just have to know the neck depth. You get what I'm trying to say, though. But I went down by 2.5 inches at this point. So if you measure from the top, that means I went down by 6.5 inches. We already removed 4 inches at the top, so that means I went down by 6.5 inches. Now at this dart point, you saw that when I got to that dart, at the dart line, you saw that when I got to the beginning of the dart, I made sure it was a straight line until I came out at the other side of the dart. The reason is because you are going to take this dart out, and when you want to join the pieces back, you want to make sure that they are on the same, they have the same length so that they can align perfectly. So I hope you get that. So that was why I did a straight line. So now I'm going to show you guys how to cut the padded. Normally I would do this with a free hand and cut it like that, but I just want to explain the reason behind it, the concept behind it, so that you can know how to cut this with a free hand. So yeah, I'm just going down by 1.5 inches from the top. I went down by 1.5 inches at the neckline. At the other side, at the dart, just go down by 1.5 inches like you see me doing. At the dart area, I also did a straight line like I did for the neckline. So that is also important for the padded. So I'm going to take 0.75. So this is my 0.75, and I'm going to place it at that point from the other side of the dart, and I'm going to take what I have from my nipple point to my under bust. And because the bust is always fuller at the side, I will add 1 inches to this measurement. So here I have 3 inches plus 1 inches, which is 4 inches, and I'm just going to mark the 4 inches on this side. Now at the down, I'm going to go out by 0.75 at the down area, and I will mark. And now I'm just going to connect it round, connect these lines like this with my free hand. So this is basically how you cut the padded. So I feel like with time, when you start doing it this way, you'll be able to cut it with a free hand. This is just the concept behind it. So on the other side, I'm not going to mark anything. I'm going to pad it completely to the under bust. So that's how I'm going to pad it. So this is all we are doing for the front. This is all we are doing for the front, and this is what it looks like. So let's just go ahead and cut this pattern out, and then we are going to move on to the back piece. So you can see the way I'm cutting. Please pay attention to the way I'm cutting, so you don't go and cut but you don't need to cut. So please pay attention and see the way take note of the way I curved the nipple points area. That is very important. So you can see the way it's aligning, and you can see the neckline the way it's aligning. So this was what I was talking about. So you can go ahead to shape the neckline whichever way you want. Now this is the pattern for the back, and I'm just going to take a straight line like this at the bottom. I was supposed to do this at the top, but just bear with me. So now I'm going to take my top length, which is 17 inches plus 1 inches for seam allowance, and I'll minus 4 inches at the top. Make sure you do that, minus 4 inches at the top like you did for the front. Now for this pattern, I did not take my zipper allowance because I'm not going to be using a zipper for this. I'm just going to use a rope for the back. So but make sure you take your zipper allowance before placing your measurements. Now I'm going to take my neckline measurements for the back. So if you are using a zipper, you want to take this measurement after the zipper line, after the 1.5 inches for your zipper allowance. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So now I'm going to come down by 4 inches. Take your armhole measurement, which is 8 inches, but you know you already minus 4 inches at the top, so what is left is 4 inches. So if you're using an armhole measurement of 9, what is left will be 9 inches. Now on that line, I'm going to take my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 and plus 2 inches for seam allowance. And at the waistline, I'm going to take my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 2 inches for seam allowance and 1 inches for dart allowance. Now I'm going to connect it. I just added half an inch for the neckline, which is for the armhole allowance, for the sleeve allowance to join like we did in front. So this is what we have, and I just connected it. So you can see that the back is so simple, like it's so simple. Now this is what we have. Please, you want to make sure that you add zipper allowance at the midpoint. It's really important. If you want to use a zip, please do not forget that. Now to take the darts, you can do different type of darts. You can either take a straight dart like this using your nipple to nipple measurements. You can take a straight dart from the waistline to the top to the neckline, or you can just take a 4 inches dart or 5 inches dart like this. So whichever way you want, or you can take the dart to your nipple points at the back. It's still okay, it's still going to be fine. But for me, I always like to take my dart to the neckline. Like, it's always so fine. I like that. I love that. I love it that way. Now I'm going to slit the other side, the zipper area. So you can see that this pattern is already pieces. So I'm just going to put that side, and I'm going to use this one pattern to cut the back and the front. So because I'm going to be adding loops to my back area and not a zipper, I'm going to reduce the length. So I'm just going to go in by 3 inches at the neckline, and I'm going to go in by 2.5 inches at the down area. I went in by 3 inches at the top and 2.5 inches at the waist area. So I'm just going to connect these lines like this. So I also went ahead to remove the darts for this. I'm going to cut this out, and I also went ahead to remove the darts because I really don't want to do any stress. But so I just removed the darts. The dart is not really necessary because I'm using loops, so I just removed the darts. But you can add that to it. It will still make it fine if you want. So I just marked 1 inches like that, and I removed the darts like this. Remember, we had 1 inches dart when we were cutting, so that was the dart that I just removed. So this is the pieces that I have, and as you can see, I've gone ahead to cut it on fabric. So don't mind that down area. I've gone ahead to cut it on fabric. Don't mind that down area. I marked 17.5 when I was cutting, so I just added that half inches at the bottom. So I didn't want to confuse you guys at the beginning of this video. That was why I said I marked 18 inches, but it was 17.5 inches that I marked earlier. So this is what we have, and after cutting, okay, so I wanted to show you guys that front, but I didn't miss that point. After cutting, I'm going to, okay, I can show you that in the next video. So this is what it looks like, and I've gone ahead to cut it on fabric. So at this point, I'm just giving the neckline a little bit of shape. I went down by 1.5 inches to make this slanting that I just did. I also cut lining for this back piece, but I'm going to explain this in my next video where I'm going to be sewing this, so don't worry that I'm not giving you like detailed details at the end. So if you want to learn how to make this bustier, how to pad it using a manual machine, because padding can be really hard when you're using a manual machine. So I'm going to explain the type of pad that you should use, and all the necessary things. I'm going to explain it. So thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment. I really love you. Thank you so much for watching this long. Thank you so much. Bye.